keep hearing people say Sophie Cunningham is speaking out. But is that actually what's happening? Here's what I've noticed. When this story first broke, Sophie Cunningham was asked about transgender athletes competing in women's sports by an ESPN reporter. Probably a question that she shouldn't have been asked in just an interview about sports and basketball and Sophie Cunningham, but she was asked that. She answered the question and has since said she stands by her answer. But here's what I've noticed. Now reporters are asking everyone in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark, Cheryl Reeve, Natalie Nakase, Sarama from Portland. To me, the story has become bigger than one player's comments. And I'm not asking you to agree with Sophie. I'm not asking you to disagree with her either. I'm simply pointing out something I think is interesting. The conversation has shifted from what did Sophie say to what does everyone else think about what Sophie said? As someone who loves covering this league, I think it's an important distinction. Sometimes the biggest story isn't the original comment. Sometimes it's how the media conversation grows after it. What do you guys think? Has this become bigger than Sophie Cunningham herself? Or should the focus still be on her original comments? I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to help you understand what's happening around the game we all love.
So we're gonna break this down and look at the story that's been ripping through the sports media, national news, now even the White House, all because one basketball player answered one question. Honestly, an interview that happened back in February, and I'm talking about, as you see on the screen, Sophie Cunningham, the Indiana Fever guard, who sat down with ESPN for a profile and was asked a straightforward question about transgender athletes in women's sports. Her answer was about as simple as direct as it could get. She said, I want, and I quote, I want to protect young girls in the locker room or young girls in sport who shouldn't have to go against biological men. She also said her stance was kind of common sense, quote unquote. And then she extends love to everyone and doesn't hate anybody. All right. Now, let me be real. There's a 5-second sentence from a basketball player answering a question she was asked, and it turned into a national firestorm that's still burning months later. So here's the timeline that matters. The interview was done in February, but ESPN published the profile on July 21st, as you see on the screen, right in the middle of the WNBA season. And the moment those words hit the internet, the league and its media apparatus went into full meltdown mode. She got called every name you could imagine. MAGA Barbie was one of the cleaner ones. There were protests, there were rallies, 3 separate rallies across different cities organized around her comments. The White House got involved. The WNBA Players Association put out a statement talking about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and said they will not be used as political pawns. And the media coverage shifted from actually covering basketball to covering a controversy about the player who said something controversial. And here's the thing, Sophia Cunningham wasn't out there giving speeches. She wasn't on a political tour. She answered a question she was asked in the interview that was supposed to be about her career and her brand. And for that, she became the most polarizing figure in women's basketball overnight. Meanwhile, the league kept playing, the season kept going on, and nobody in the WNBA front office seemed interested in actually clarifying what the rules are. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because this is where the conversation shifts from one player's comment to a much bigger problem. So earlier this month, former NBA center Enes Kanter Freedom, who was 6'10", a former first-round draft pick, a man who played over 400 games in the NBA, officially declared himself eligible for the 2027 WNBA draft. Not to mention also Royce White, who played on the Houston Rockets, who's also a former NBA player himself. And he didn't do it as a joke, you know, Kantar Freedom. He did it by citing the league's own eligibility rules. His team reviewed the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement, which says, and I'm quoting directly here, only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA. That's it. That's the whole policy. The CBA does not define the word woman. It does not specify a biological sex. It does not mention hormone levels or physical attributes. And it certainly does not say that self-identification alone is enough or isn't enough. So Kantar Freedom's argument is simple. If the league has no clear definition. And if the league's leadership and players union has spent years championing inclusion and self-identification as core values, then what exactly disqualifies him? And he said he's not trying to mock anyone. He said he's asking for the rules to be applied equally to everyone. And like I mentioned, just hours later, former NBA first round pick Royce White did the same thing, telling Fox News he identifies as, and I quote, sometimes identify as a woman for purposes of professional basketball. And this is where we have to stop and think clearly, because the reaction to Kanter Freedom and Royce White tells you everything you need to know about the double standard as they see it at the heart of this entire debate. The same people who called Sophie Cunningham a bigot for saying she wanted to protect girls in sports suddenly went silent when two grown men said they were going to use the league's own rules to play women's basketball. Then the WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, sent a memo to teams saying a task force would discuss the issue. A task force. You had rallies and national headlines over a player saying biological men shouldn't compete against girls. But when two former NBA players actually declared for the draft for the WNBA, and the response is, we'll form a committee. The players union put out a statement saying we embrace justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and then added, we will not be used as political pawns. But here's the question. Nobody in that building wants to answer. If the rules are inclusive enough to let anyone who identifies as a woman, then on what basis do you keep Kanter Freedom out? And if you do keep him out, then you need to explain in plain English to every young girl and every parent watching who admires and actually has dreams to go to the WNBA what the actual standard is. That's really what this is about. That's really what this comes down to in a nutshell.
I think it's trans rights right now is our new battle. That's what I think I was saying, that like the battles have changed.
Oh, yes.
You know, like our intentions have been the same, but now the environment has changed. We see trans people's rights being, stripped away from them. There's a lot of discourse around trans athletes and what they can compete in. I would welcome a trans athlete on my team or against my team anytime. I don't think it's a problem in the world. It's just another way to kind of attack trans people. We've seen players like Lasia Clarendon who stepped into that forefront and have been brave enough and courageous enough to kind of step up. So I guess that's the next battle that we have to fight as athletes.
You can't be a male, born a male, transitioning to female, and think that you should have the right to compete with women. Not in basketball, not in football, not in boxing, not in the UFC. Hell, not even in tennis. It's an aberration when you find somebody like a Serena Williams serving 120 miles, 25 miles an hour. That's ordinary for Jokic or Jokovic. That's ordinary for Sinner. That's ordinary for Alcaraz. That was ordinary for Sampras, Agassi, and all of these guys. We got to stop this. We got to stop acting like somebody that's speaking up on behalf of girls like a Sophie Cunningham, like a Riley Gaines, are scourges of the earth. You are Cheryl Reeve, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx. That is an irresponsible thing to do. You are a coach for a female basketball team. Do you not think that the females are being screwed over if they have to compete against an individual born as a male? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
People have the right to be what they want to be. At the end of the day, it's all love where I'm coming from. But the simple fact is, where is the distinction to respect both spaces, trans and woman? Because now you'll have trans who biologically was born a male overpower a woman and basically discredit them in regards of taking over their jobs. So the question I think what this conversation really embodies is, how can you respect both spaces with the distinction of realizing that trans and women have their own identities within themselves of being who they are and have the right to be who they are in regards of staying a woman or being trans, but how do you respect both spaces and boundaries and still being able to operate with their true identity and authentic self in spaces where they don't feel compromised? That's really what this is coming down to.
In a world where trans rights and transhumanity is so compromised, just them living in their humanity. It's so jarring to see the uproar, the turmoil that has been this past few days and weeks in the WNBA with discussion around it. So igniting the entire anti-trans movement is bizarre. It's toxic. I don't know the words for it. I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted.
It just really seems like controversy for controversy's sake.
For no reason.
Like what you said, like it's not even a thing. It's not happening. It's not a threat to anything. Even if it was happening, it wouldn't be a threat to anything.
It's not a threat.
But it's actually not even going on. So why we're talking about it in this way and being inflammatory about, I don't know, just there's a level of pandering that seems to be going on that just doesn't really make sense to me.
The real threat to women's sports is other toxicity, like grooming, like sexual abuse. There's so many different issues that are actually prominent that are a real threat to girls and women, or people who identify as girls and women in sport.
Yes.
When you exclude trans kids, trans people, trans women from these spaces, not only are you putting their lives at risk, but you're showing that it's not as inclusive as the premise that it has been before.
Just because you don't particularly understand something or understand something's place doesn't make it a threat. Just because you're uncomfortable, you are elevating a level of danger around a particular group of people, and that's not okay.
It's a bad faith argument for somebody to be the mouthpiece for this who played boys high school football. So I just think that there's irony in that.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2027. I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices. I am simply asking that the current rules be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception. And I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles. See you at training camp.
So there you have that, right? So let me put it in real world terms, right? Think about what this means for a young girl Sophie Cunningham was talking about in the interview. You got a 10-year-old girl who loves basketball, who dreams of playing in the WNBA one day. You have, Cheryl Reeve. You have former WNBA players who were playing just around girls they feel like in a respectable space, and they may want that same experience amongst females only. So Sophia Cunningham working on her game, she's going to practice, young females, young girls watching the fever on TV, and the league she's looking up to cannot answer, I should say, a basic question. Who gets to be a woman in this league? Is it based on biology? Is it based on what you say you are? Is it based on hormone levels? Is it based on the doctor's note? Because those are not fringe questions. Those are the kind of questions that determine whether that 10-year-old girl grows up competing on a fair playing field or watching a 6'10" former NBA center suit up against their idol. And the fact that the league's response to Kanter Freedom and Royce White is silence and a task force instead of a clear, definitive policy tells you something, which is why this is sparking so much controversy and questions. So they can organize rallies against Sophia Cunningham in the weekend, and they can put out press releases about inclusion in the afternoon, but they cannot write 3 sentences defining what a woman is for the purpose of professional basketball. It's a choice, right? You know what I'm saying? Choices come with consequences, and I'm gonna leave it there.
All right, real quick, I see that Julie to Tart if I'm saying that correctly, from France, is averaging 21 and 20 rebounds. This is a transgender player. She was asked if she could go to the WNBA. Would she? She responded, she wouldn't say no. And what I want to say is, I don't think that's fair to the women of the day, the young women of society who are growing up to be athletes. I don't think it's fair. You were born a man with certain attributes that are only given to men. That's some speed, that's strength, that's athleticism, that is just naturally given to us as men. It has nothing to do with what you identify as, has nothing to do with any type of communities. This is strictly about sports, and no one is judging you for your choices, beliefs, or views, because that's only for God to do. That's just my opinion. I don't judge anyone. But I do believe that if you are so good as an athlete, go try that in the NBA and see if you average 21 and 20. I mean, we don't see women who identify as men jumping in the NBA. So why should men who identify as women be able to go to the WNBA? It's a barrier. We know it is. We've seen with multiple different sports across the genre, men are naturally stronger.
So there you have it, right? I'm just being objective, reporting the controversy, just asking the questions, are respecting the entirety of the conversation because this is a touchy subject. People look. I'm the type, be who you are, right? Your choice is your choice. Like I say, at the end of the day, when it comes to the league, being an organization, and having a front office, business wise, just know whatever choice you make comes with consequences, good or bad. That's all I'm saying, and I'm just speaking to it objective wise and speaking to how this got where it's at and also what it's coming down to, which is a touchy but also challenging type of thing to see and interesting to see how it pans out. Like I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't know how the lead is going to somewhat definitively, keep the inspiration of what the league has always been and changing it to where it's respecting both communities, definitively woman, definitively trans. Um, that simple.
All right, real quick. I see that Julie Tart, if I'm saying that correctly, from France, is averaging 21 and 20 rebounds. This is a transgender player. She was asked if she could go to the WNBA. Would she? She responded, she wouldn't say no. And what I want to say is, I don't think that's fair to the women of the day, the young women of society who are growing up to be athletes. I don't think it's fair. You were born a man with certain attributes that are only given to men. That's some speed, that's strength, that's athleticism, that is just naturally given to us as men. It has nothing to do with what you identify as, has nothing to do with any type of communities. This is strictly about sports, and no one is judging you for your choices, beliefs, or views, because that's only for God to do. That's just my opinion. I don't judge anyone. But I do believe that if you are so good as an athlete, go try that in the NBA and see if you average 21 and 20. I mean, we don't see women who identify as men jumping in the NBA. So why should men who identify as women be able to go to the WNBA? It's a barrier. We know it is. We've seen with multiple different sports across the genre, men are naturally stronger. Women can get stronger, but a natural giving gift, strength, and speed is what makes us men. So yeah, I stand with Sophie Cunningham. Like I said before, it's nothing to go against any group or community. It's just being real. Like, and I only want real perspective and real views. Let me see, Julie, go to the NBA and average 20 and 20. Then talk to me. Until then, let me know what y'all think. Like I said before, this is not against any community. I respect every community. I respect every thought. But let's keep it all the way 100 about sports. Ain't no place in sports for this. And I want the young ladies that are growing up, the younger women generation, to still feel empowered that they can win. And the odds are not stacked against them more than they already are. So let me know what y'all think. Yep.
And I mean this as respectfully as possible. But ninth grade Lonzo Ball in the WNBA, it's going crazy. All right. Because look, in ninth grade, I'm over 6 feet and I'm dunking. Like, I'm coming through the, like, no girl in the WNBA is doing that. I'm going back door, throw it up. Like, I'm looking like Jordan out there. So I'm going to just say, and I mean this so respectfully.
So great senior.
Middle school down, I give it to the WNBA.
I'm gonna go probably 8th grade because look, bro, I have real experience doing this because I played. My sisters went to University of Missouri and I was still a young dude, and they had me playing like on the scout team, and they had a few WNBA players on the team like Sophie Cunningham and a couple others, and I think I was like in the 7th or 8th grade going dumb. I'm talking about like, so I have real life experience.
It's not physically fair, bro.
It's just a difference, man. And I wish this would stop being a conversation because it should be common sense, but like it's just not. But I appreciate, common sense. I feel like sometimes that's lost a little bit.
What's the solution? My solution is everybody plays against the boys. Do you got a solution?
I agree. Let's go. One league. Let's see what happens. But what's going to happen is girls are going to get wiped out. And all of the women, the pioneer athletes that I look up to and I respected, and I made my players actually pay attention to who came before them. The players that are here now, I don't know if they understand what women had to go through years ago in the 70s and the 80s to get to a point where they actually could play and have their own leagues. I don't think they understand that. If you want to do that, make one league, women will be phased out. And so these women that are fighting for women power, are now phasing themselves out of jobs. And you're not saying that trans kids can't play. Give them a place to play. It's fine. Everyone can have an opportunity. But I think that whatever is on your birth certificate is where you should be playing. It's just common sense. They're trying to convince us otherwise.
Subscribe to Don't At Me with Dan.
So I'm just giving you the different perspectives. Everybody's trying to find common ground while respecting all parties and individuals being who they are, and trying to make sense of it to the simple fact where it's out of love and peace and not tearing anyone down, as you can see with all the perspectives. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but I'm going to bring this home with scripture because this is one of those moments where the Bible speaks to directly what's happening, right? So a lot of people feel, as you've seen the guy who mentioned that, taking it up with God. And most of the individuals of faith, and I'm just telling you from a spiritual perspective how people who are gung-ho on what the word says based on faith and Bible and God. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1 says, "The false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but just weight is his delight." A false balance, that's a scale that's been rigged to give you the answer you want instead of the answer that's true. So a lot of individuals will say that's what's happening here because the WNBA is using a false balance. They weighed Sophie Cunningham's comment and make it a national crisis. And then they weigh two men declaring for the women's draft and suddenly the scale doesn't work and they need a task force, right? A just weight means you apply the same standard to everyone regardless of whether the outcome is convenient or embarrassing or politically complicated. That's what fairness actually looks like. So, and for individuals who are not spiritually inclined, from the spiritual perspective of what the guy was saying, right, in one of the clips, when an institution cannot define its own terms, it is not confused. It is protecting its ability to make exceptions, and exceptions always benefit the powerful at the expense of the powerless. So, the young girl who just want to play basketball fair is not powerful. She is not in the room where the task force meets, and she is not signing the press releases. She is just hoping someone will be honest enough to tell her what the rules actually are. So my question, do you believe the WNBA owes the public a clear written definition of who is eligible to play? Or is silence and a task force an acceptable answer? Let me know in the comments, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications. Spread the peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. Catch you in the next one. Peace.